To our regularly scheduled Waterville Planning Board meeting. My name is Samantha Burdick. I am the chair of the Planning Board. Have
David Johnson.
Tom Dupre.
April Chiraboga.
Uriah Pelletier.
Bruce White, and I will say this is a nice setup for all involved that prepared it, so thank you.
And then we have Hillary Cope joining us virtually. Do you want to introduce yourself, Hillary?
Hi, everyone. You just did. I'm Hillary Cook, and I'm here via Zoom.
Thank you. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is approval of our August 2nd minutes.
Make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, April. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Did we fix the one thing that Bruce had picked up on? Yeah, okay. So,
Thank you.
all right, we'll do we have to do a roll call for the minutes? Or can we? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes? Okay. Thank you. Number 2, disclosure of conflict of interest. Does any board member think that they have a conflict with any of the votes that they'll take tonight?
I just want to clarify, since new people are here, that a couple meetings ago I expressed that I'm a member of the Corpus Christi Parish, and but the board voted that it wouldn't be a conflict. But just wanted to make sure that's out there.
Thank you.
Okay, there has been some conversation about me potentially having a conflict of interest. My husband is Josh Martin. He has been involved in the neighborhood petition, and I assure everybody that I am able to discharge my duties in an unbiased fashion and make judgments that are according to the law. I do not have a conflict of interest here.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. Item number 3, Waterville Public Schools is requesting an informal pre-application review for a 10,000 square foot storage building to be constructed at Waterville Junior High at 100 West River Road. Someone here to talk about that, Ann? I don't see.
Could we come back to this item if he shows up?
He's on.
Zoom. Where is
Okay. Bring him in, Allie.
I think it's the city council.
I can't.
Capital P.
There. Good evening. My name is Jeff Allen. I'm with A. Hodson Engineers in Waterville here. I'm just presenting about the school building, the school storage building that's going to be built over by the junior high. This building is 100 by 100 or 10,000 square feet, and it's just going to be open space inside. This will be used by the school department to store furniture and various school supplies as they're taking out. They need to make room in some of the classrooms to make them more COVID friendly by being able to space out desks and other items like that. And so that's the intent, is to have a space, a common place that all the schools can put it in the same put furniture and materials in the same building. It'll be located right at the end of the parking lot at the junior high. And it's sort of in the area where the ropes course is now, or there are poles there for a ropes course. That'll be removed, and this building will be erected in the same area. I think Ann also has let you know that there's a need to rezone this area. This area is currently zoned resource protection, and we would like to rezone it to residential B, which is what the remainder of the school is. that's something that I guess is underway with the city council, and that process has started. We just need to see that through to completion before we can permit this, I believe. So I guess with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions from the board? Bruce?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what the time frame is. I might have missed it if you said that, but
No, actually, I did not mention that. They're hoping to do this very quickly. Some of the money to fund this with is some of the COVID relief money, and I believe they would like to start that this fall. So it won't be, too long before they want to start that. I know they've been working with a contractor to do the work, and that's being bid, and final designs are in place now, I believe.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
well, just as long as they are aware that if it takes a rezone, it has to come to us, go back to the council. It's a little bit of a cumbersome process, as you know. So you're talking, that will add to your time frame.
Yes, and I think Ann is working on this now to kind of resolve this as quickly as possible, but hopefully this is something that'll be done within the next month or two.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So number 4 on the agenda, Anthony Cevitillo is requesting preliminary and final plan review for a 5-lot subdivision on Evergreen Drive in accordance with Articles 8 and 9 of the Subdivision Ordinance. Who was supposed to?
That would be Jeff.
It's Jeff again? Okay. Bring him back in. I thought so.
I should have let him know not to take him more.
Question for the chair. Where seem to be having trouble with Wi-Fi over here? Is there anybody here that can help? You know, is there on-site support?
Allie's here.
Thank you, Ally. Just 1 second, Jeff, sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
Perfect. This can't be Bassville, right?
Thank you. I'm good, yeah. All right, Jeff.
Oh, okay, thank you. Jeff Allen again from AE Hodson, and the next project here is on Evergreen Large Lot that had been previously permitted for, I believe, 7. That was done back in 2008. It was all approved and permitted with Maine DEP and all ready to go. But just as things changed, that was not built. What he wants to do now is abandon that plan and just go ahead and divide it into 5 individual lots. All the lots will have at least 100 feet of frontage, which is the minimum frontage requirement for this zone. And we don't really have any, at least not that I know of, any plans for particular buildings to be built on this. These are just going to be sold to individual lot buyers who will then may put a duplex or whatever it is. But I believe if it is a complicated plan with condominiums or something like that, that would certainly have to come back to the town. This land was also permitted with Maine Department of Environmental Protection. And so to change the plan that we had with DEP, we had to do a site location modification to convert this back into raw land and take away that condominium plan that had been approved before. So that we have filed with DEP. We expect this is pretty simple. We're not planning on building anything. We don't have to go through any stormwater analysis or water, sewer, any of the other constraints that are usually difficult to address in DEP applications. So this is just going to be left as raw land at this point. The land will just be divided into 5 lots. The only easement along the property is a drainage way that's on the eastern side toward the southeast side of the Evergreen Drive, and that will be maintained. It's a 60-foot wide greenway is what it was called before in the approval. That will be retained on that lot that contains the greenway. No other restrictions are being placed on the property from the owner anyway, so buyers could do whatever they want. But again, they may end up going back to DEP to get approval because this particular parcel has been involved with DEP permitting in the past, and whatever is done would have to meet requirements that they would place on the property as well. It's going to have city water and sewer because that already exists in Evergreen Drive, and there are utility poles that are near the end of the property, both on the, I guess, the east and west end of the property. So it would have public utilities as well. So as it is right now, there's no impact. It's just simply a division of land. I believe that's everything. If you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any questions from the board? Yeah, Jim?
Not a board member, but counsel for the city. Quick question. This was actually an approved subdivision by the city of Waterville back in 2008?
Yes, this was lot 2 of the Ridgewood Heights subdivision. I'm sorry.
So is this being presented as an amendment to an approved subdivision plan, a further amendment, or as its own subdivision?
There was a note on the previous plan that said if lot 2 wanted to be further subdivided, that we'd have to come back to the board. Okay. So that's the reason we're doing this. I don't know if it would be an amendment to that subdivision.
Fair enough.
Or if it would be, that's a good question. One point before we can finalize this, we have to have the involvement of a surveyor because engineers can't stamp subdivision plans. So we're working with K&K surveyors who also did the original subdivision, and we'll get the input from them as to what needs to be done as far as whether it's a further subdivision of a previous subdivision or if this can be a new one. We've retained the names Ridgeway Heights, Lot 2, and so I'm not 100% sure on that, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Okay, we will move on to our findings and, oh, yep, sorry. Yep, you have to come up to the microphone, please. Chad, can they use either or?
Okay, I'll sit if you don't mind. Okay, my name is Kathleen Kelly, and I live directly.
Can't hear her, actually.
I think you might have to get a little bit closer. There we go.
Got it. My
Yep.
name is Kathleen Kelly. Can you hear it?
Is that good, Chad? Little,
Yes, okay.
okay.
And I live directly opposite most of the sites of the proposed project. At the present time, entering Evergreen Drive from building 300 to 308 is hazardous already due to visibility being obscured in both directions by the curve. What Evergreen Drive does not need is 5 more driveways entering the curve abutting that location. Most traffic now is probably local, but is often in the middle of the road at an unsafe speed. More thought should be put into consideration of approval of this project.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else from the board? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Carl Diker. I live at 316 Evergreen Drive, which is right at the beginning of the curve. And I'd like to reiterate what Mrs. Kelly just said. We walk that circuit around the neighborhood every day, and it can be dangerous when cars come around that corner. They don't see you coming. And as it is, we have driveways on one side of the street. If we add driveways to the other side of the street, it's just going to exacerbate the situation. So I would wish that the planners would take that into consideration when they're even considering this, because I think it's a dangerous thing. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Just to put you at ease, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty slow rollout of a building on this land, and it is zoned correctly, so he can do that on the land. But I would say maybe the city council could address some of the traffic concerns. Our board doesn't address that, but perhaps that you could reach out to your counselor if you're having safety concerns as it is.
There's
Uriah?
also an email from the city engineer, and maybe we can just kick something over to him to let him know the concerns, and maybe he can revisit the site and take a look, see what he can do.
What did he have on?
I wonder if the developer would like to comment on the questions here.
Jeff, do you have anything else you'd like to comment on?
Regarding
with their
that parking
concerns?
at least, or regarding the traffic.
As I said, we don't have any particular plans for what's going to be on there. It may be as few as 5 house lots. I don't know what's going to go in there. Certainly, the traffic generated by 5 house lots would be much less than is on the property now. I know when we went to send out public notices here, we sent out public notices to 57 abutters. Some of them own multiple properties, so there were rental properties. But I don't believe there's any intent, or I know that there's no intent at this point, to put multiple housing units on there, or multiple dwelling unit houses, condos, whatever. So the other thing is we're on the outside of the curve. The line of sight would be a little bit better, perhaps, on the outside of the curve than it is on the inside of the curve. I understand the traffic coming out. Basically, you can't see around to the left and right far enough as you're coming out of some of the driveways of the condominium units, which units these folks are from. But that is a concern, and I would understand that completely. But I think the impact that we would have, or the potential impact we would have, would be much less than if we were to multi-unit condo on there on the same property. Just the density of development would be lower now than if we were to do something else.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions from the board or members of the public? Okay, we will move on to the findings and facts. Jeff, do you have a copy of those handy?
I do. Ann emailed them earlier.
Okay, great. The development will not result in undue water or air pollution on or off the site. True or false?
True.
Thank you.
True.
And we have an email message from the city engineer stating that. Number 2, sufficient water available for reasonable foreseeable needs of the development, including but not limited to potable water and fire control water.
Also true.
And we have a message from the fire chief. Number 3, will not cause unreasonable soil erosion or reduction in the capacity of the land to hold water.
True.
Number 4, the development will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion or unsafe conditions with respect to the use of highways or public roads existing or proposed both on and off the site.
That's true.
And we do have an email from the city engineer stating that. Number 5, the development will provide for adequate solid waste disposal.
True.
Number 6, the development will not cause an unreasonable burden on the ability of the municipality to dispose sewage.
True.
We have a message from the superintendent of the water sewage district. Number 7, the development will not have undue adverse effect on the scenic or natural beauty of the area, aesthetics, historic sites, or rare and irreplaceable natural areas, or any public rights for physical or visual access to the shoreline.
True.
Number 8, the development is in conformance with zoning.
True.
Number 9, the developer has adequate financial and technical capacity to meet the above stated standards.
True.
And we do have a couple conditions, the storm drainage system and sanitary and sewer that were attached there. Are you comfortable with those, Jeff?
I am.
Okay. Yes.
Just a question. When we talk about the development, we're talking about just transforming it to 5 lots, right? We're not talking about anything that would be built later. That all those conditions would be revisited if there were building on that land?
Well,
You
Ann.
really need to come to the microphone so everyone can hear you.
I just wondered, when we use the term the development, are we just talking about turning it into 5 lots instead of whatever it is now? It's not, all these questions you've asked there, it's not referencing what happens if something gets built on that land. Is that correct? All that has to be revisited?
May I?
Yep.
Yes. You're just approving the 5 lots at this point. Most of them are more than an acre in size, so it's possible that someone could choose to build multifamily housing there in the future, but that would have to come back.
And all those conditions would be
Yeah,
reconsidered?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so these conditions are basically for 5 houses.
Right.
Right, Ann?
Right. A single-family home can be constructed without any planning board review.
Approval.
So if somebody purchased a lot and decided to build more than a single-family home, they'd have to come to the planning board for approval, and then we'd look at the conditions again.
But again, currently the way that it stands, they can build a condominium much larger, a lot more people than 5 single-family homes. So they're asking to kind of scale that back. Do I have a motion to accept the findings and facts?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, Tom? Or
Tom
was
and
it-
then Dave.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll do a roll call since Hillary's on the computer. So David?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tom?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Uriah?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
And Hillary?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want us to sign that before we leave, Ann, or right now?
That would
or?
be great if,
Okay.
unless, if we did it right now, that would be great.
Okay, let's do it right now. Makes sense.
You want to go ahead and sign, David, and then just pass it down? And I'll fill in the move in a second. Motion. I'll just say check.
We need like a stamp for Hillary.
Yeah.
Can I steal your pen too? Okay.
Thank you.
And number 5 is a continuation of our last meeting, the Sacred Heart Church at 72 Pleasant Street rezoning. So I'd like to start with having people that were unable to speak at the last meeting because of our technical difficulties. That is the reason why we've continued this. So I want to give those people an opportunity to speak. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was a big whiner last time.
That's okay. I'm glad that you spoke up.
Well, so I'm just going to read something that I drafted. It's a general statement about the property, and I was not able to hear most of what happened, and I wasn't able to watch most of the recording of it either. So this may be covering territory that others have already covered, and things also seem to be shifting rather all the time on this whole issue. So, but what I wanted to say then was, with regard to the Sacred Heart property, speaking as a longtime resident of Waterville and a representative of the Poor People's Campaign and National Call for Moral Revival, whose deepest concerns are for the many poor and low-wealth individuals and families in our community, whom revitalization is not necessarily benefiting, what I would hope is that the church and the affiliated property could be imagined as a vibrant community center serving the members of our community who are in greatest need, thereby helping to advance the overall well-being of Waterville as a whole. I would love to see the property reconfigured as a center for services that are not being provided elsewhere, or that other entities like the homeless shelter, KVCAP, the Boys and Girls Club, the Muskie Center, the public library, etc., are quite reasonably finding themselves stretched to offer a cooling and warming shelter, for example, which we do not have, the site for the area soup kitchen, which used to be there but now doesn't have a place to go, perhaps some offices where social workers and other community builders and agencies could offer much needed support and guidance of various types, maybe a low-cost childcare program. We're going to have a rather higher cost childcare program up by Colby, but how about another low-cost childcare program, as well as other sorts of programming, cultural and otherwise, that might be of interest and use to residents for whom entities like the wonderful Colby Art Museum may have less appeal, and so forth. To me, this would be much more in keeping with the church's original function in the community and would present a much more valuable contribution to the community than another events center. And I will just close by saying that ideally such a community center might also be a central focal point, a building block for development in Waterville of truly decent, truly affordable housing, which the city so desperately needs, and not just for seniors, but for younger residents as well as families. So that's what I would like to see.
I'll just say I very much appreciate your comments, but our job here today is to just comment on what the city council has sent to us. So while it is fun to be able to dream of what our ideal thing is, we unfortunately can't make that determination of what the property owners can do with their property, but we appreciate those comments. Rian?
So I want to start first by offering a proposed amendment to the draft memo as written. Right now, the memo states that the use will revert back only if the property is sold by the developer. And that is, I've done some research into other ordinances and other contract zones, and I cannot find one that is facilitated on the sale of the property. Most of them are hinged on when the use stops being the use of what it was contracted for. And the big example is the museum, and that it's actually written in there that if it stops being a museum, the use reverts back. It's not if the, if they continue to own that property, that they can kind of do whatever they want with it. A lot of the discussion is based on what the use of this property will be for, and so I would just very strongly recommend changing that to that if the use stops being an event center instead of if the property is sold. And then I want to say that there's kind of a lot of emotion around this about the church, about the plans, and, you know, as Elizabeth just said, about kind of the future use of the church. But your job is to decide if this does or does not fit with the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan really suggests supporting business development within zoning districts that are already zoned for commercial use instead of infringing into residential. And that there's really no compelling reason to move into residential and to disrupt the harmony of the residential neighborhood with this event center. There are plenty of vacant commercial properties in the city inside of commercial zoned areas that an event center could move to. And based on this list that I think I'm looking at ahead of time here, it seems like the use of an event center does not fit with other commercial A uses that currently reside in residential zones, which tend to close very early in the evening and do not serve alcohol and also do not have uses as an event center. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments that you weren't, someone that wasn't able to make it the last meeting?
Hi, I'm Timothy Mayo Carter. I'm married to Jeffrey Carter. And, you know, I just have to explain to you all that I've moved to Waterville from Anson and into the city, so to speak, and about 4 years ago. And I find that the camaraderie in our neighborhood, everyone gets together and makes sure that we're all okay. And to have something like this in our backyard, it not only affects my children, but it also affects my pets and my walking routine and you know, evening walks with the dogs. I don't know how that will present itself. I may not be able to go around the church. I may have to go further on the other end of town to make that happen. But, you know, it does affect our lives in so many ways. And staying open until 1 o'clock, it's ludicrous. It's ridiculous to stay open until 1 when you have a neighborhood of people that are working people, have families, children, whatnot. So that's all I needed to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that were unable to comment in the last meeting? Would like to say something? Okay. Any comments from the board about our memo or what we've heard?
How is, yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. Right, well, because it's a continuation of the meeting, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to speak, but I also want to give the planning board an opportunity to discuss this memo so that we can move this forward. So I want to make sure that the planning board has an opportunity to do that before I take any other comments right now. So, does the planning board have anything that they would like to see changed in the memo that we have or added?
Are we, what is the process? Are we going to go through it again, or are we just kind of roughly discussing if it meets the conditions? Where did I have it written?
You want to go through it page by page?
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, we can.
What we're doing.
I think it'd be important to really make sure we are clear on it, and so reviewing it. I'm not saying we have to go through every, you know, beat it to death, but I think it's important that we all know what, including the public, that we are able to discuss it if we need to. And I think we've had some emails going back and forth regarding some proposed, you know, amendments, so to speak. I've heard talk about the soup kitchen, you know, possibly utilizing some of that space, which I think the community seems to be very supportive of.
Yeah, Bruce, the problem that I have is that's not what the city council sent us. So, that's,
Well-
I mean, like Sam said earlier, it's great to, discuss that, but the city council sent us a very specific thing that we need to respond to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we know, I mean, there are emails going around with this info, so people ought to be aware of that. And, there's potential use of the old office building for, so maybe we need to just make sure that at some point that might have to be discussed, I guess. And somebody mentioned 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, I don't know that that was ever thrown out, and just kind of clarify on times maybe as we go through this.
Okay.
So thank you, David, for mentioning that.
Yep.
So, the first 2 pages are just sort of the standards of what we're doing, correct, Jim?
Correct.
Like the standards of rezoning and everything. So if we want to look at the 3rd page, and then the other thing that we want to do is, Jim has left us sort of some blanks. So if planning board members have motions of how to finish those areas and our recommendations to the council, I think this would be a good time to do that. So, okay. So number 1, the consistency with the city's growth management comprehensive plan. I know, Dave, you had done a lot of research with that, on that part. Does anybody see anything that they would change or add to this?
Sam, right above that is A, the recommendation.
Well, that would be what we vote on.
That'll
Yep.
be the ultimate.
Yeah, so that's like
So
the
we
ultimate
get to that
thing.
last?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay,
I know,
Gotcha.
I read it too, and I was like, oh, A is what we come back to at the end.
okay.
So, yeah, so our first section's demographics. We looked at housing, the local economy, recreational facilities, historic and cultural resources. I don't know, is anything left out there, Dave?
Land use.
Land, do we have that? Oh,
was
yeah,
the last-
existing land use.
Was the last one.
Yep. It's at the bottom, so I missed it.
That's everything on number 1.
That's everything. Do any members of the planning board have anything that they would like to add or change to that?
That's not number 2, right? We're not to that one
No,
yet?
we're not on number
Okay,
2 yet,
got it.
number 1. Okay, so we need to finish the sentence.
I had a question.
Yes, go ahead, Hillary.
So I'm not sure if it's in the right place or not. So my question was, and I think I'm probably going to direct it at David. Because I don't have the comprehensive plan open. Somewhere in the comprehensive plan, David, when you were first giving a pass at this, you were referencing groups that sort of weighed in on this. Do you remember where in the comprehensive plan that was?
Can you I was referencing what?
You were referencing any groups or organizations that
sure.
came together to sort of weigh in, and you looked at the neighborhood sort of group that had come together and sort of classified them as an organization. Do you remember how you kind of lumped that in the comprehensive plan, what that fell into?
Yeah, let me open up that document.
I think the comprehensive plan just references,
It was in chapter 13.
yeah.
It was chapter 13,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it was in chapter 13. I'll find it here.
Oh, yeah, policies, page 15. The city shall support citizen grassroots efforts to improve neighborhoods.
Right.
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
That is. So I'm not sure what that would fall under here. And I guess my question would be, we had had a discussion about sort of while this wasn't like an official organization, we thought it sort of might fall under one. And then my secondary question would be, we did have an organization that submitted a letter to the planning board that was the Pleasant Street United Methodist Church. They did not come to the hearing, but they did submit a letter. And for full public disclosure, again, I disclosed this at a meeting, a member of the Pleasant Street United Methodist Church. I was not involved in any discussions about this. I was not involved in the letter that our path was going to be submitted. I didn't see it until after it was submitted. But that would be another organization that had submitted a letter. And so I think it falls under the comprehensive plan. I just wasn't sure how to incorporate it here, or if it should be incorporated. I think it should, but I'm not sure how and where.
I think it would go in the land use section. That's where it's under in the comprehensive plan.
I see it under housing.
Oh, is it?
Well,
It's on page.
There's actually lists of groups in every section.
Yeah, in the notes that I had,
Okay.
it was under housing. I can only open so many documents on this
I know.
screen at once.
I have a paper copy, David, if you, of your notes.
Yeah, so under housing, it says support and encourage the work of Waterville's neighborhood groups and associations. And
Right, and I mean, I could not find anywhere where it actually defined what a group or association was.
yeah,
So I feel that, you know, that neighborhood has certainly formed a group.
yeah,
So-
it does say under land use, it says, the city shall support citizen grassroots efforts to improve neighborhoods, including reviewing and voting on adapted neighborhood improvement plans that may be developed by, and then they list like Senna as one of them, and the South End Neighborhood Plan, but I think the housing one is a little bit more pertinent. So could we add, oh, it does, we do have that in the goals, Hillary, in our memo, under
Do we have the
housing.
Pleasant Street United Methodist Church as well?
Well, we didn't name, it just says the goals on, it says support and encourage the work of neighborhood groups in the goals of. So in our memo,
Okay.
in section 1, if you go to where it says housing, says goals, and there's some bullet points. The last bullet point says support and encourage the work of neighborhood groups.
Neighborhood groups. We're just
Yeah.
not specifying it. Got it. Thank you
Because
very much.
I believe it was just pulled from the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
So I think if you wanted to, in this, the blank that we have here to fill out for the memo where it says the planning board reads these sections together to find, that would be where we decide if it meets the comprehensive plan of this section or not, and that would be where we would use specific neighborhood groups that maybe have contacted us and what they've said.
Yep. Okay, thank
The
you.
more specific part. Does that make sense to everybody? Am I getting that correct, Jim?
I think you're doing fine.
Okay, thanks.
These
Sorry,
are all
it's a little clunky
No.
trying to write a memo in a meeting, you know.
understood. And, you know, that's why if, it could be that we wind up giving direction to Ann and to me to come up with something more completely drafted for you to review and then actually act on at your next meeting. But let's see how we do with this. The
Okay.
idea here is you have a proposal in front of you. And when you look at that and you contrast it with the comprehensive plan, is this in line with how you balance these goals under and policies? And you may want to look at the project as a whole or the aspects of the project. You know, the event center, how does that balance with these goals and priorities? The office use, the residential use of the rectory, how does each component match with your balance of these. And that may be a way to try to express it. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yep. Does anybody want to try to take a stab at that? Why don't we start with the event center? So based off of the research that's been given to us, the research that we've done on the comprehensive plan, how does the planning board feel about how the event center meets the comprehensive plan?
I would say, I would make a motion to say it does not.
I would second that motion. So the event center,
Why would you say based on the comprehensive plan? Because that's something we have to explain.
right.
It isn't just yes or no, but what is it? When you balance this, how do you get there? I'm not putting you on the spot, but
I know.
that's something the board has to
I
think
feel
about.
very much on the spot, I'm not going to lie. So I think that under housing, all 4 of those goals are not met by the comprehensive plan. I would say the local economy, it might help, it might meet that section a little bit better. And then, where's the part where it talks about how the land use
Under,
part too?
and under demographics, create a city that is a great place to live and raise a family and grow a business. 2 of those things, 2 of the 3, it definitely detracts from that goal.
So I would
And
say
we've heard
that
from that group.
we have heard from neighborhood neighbors and neighborhood groups, 2 different neighborhood groups, the United Methodist group as well as a group of neighbors, saying that it would impact negatively.
And I
their-
think that would be because of the hours and the alcohol
Yeah.
Yes.
consumption.
Yes.
Would be the only 2 factors that would.
their
Yeah,
residential neighborhood.
there were concerns with parking as well.
That's right.
That was the 3rd.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
So can you wordsmith that, Jim?
I think I've got something to work with.
Okay. Look, this could be wonderful. Yes.
I just wonder if it's relevant also that in the proposal, there is this paragraph about how if we don't do this, this might be turned into low-income or senior housing. There's a kind of caution about that possibility, and that does not seem to be,
That-
as a proposal,
Yeah, it was.
in keeping with the
It
comprehensive
was a
plan.
comment that was made, it was not in the document that council sent us,
Yeah.
so.
It's in this from Bacchus, this memo from Bacchus?
Right, that's
Of July?
not what the council sent us.
I see.
So
To
what we're
approve
commenting on is the
and write a report
council
on.
sent us the opportunity to rezone this property to a commercial A zone in order for it to be used as an event center. So we are doing research based off of the comprehensive plan to see if that zoning change meets the comprehensive plan of the city.
I just wanted to, if I could.
Shoot, we gotta go on to. Keep it consistent.
We are, so is this only, is this about,
Pertinent to something that was said about the Methodist Church, because Father,
You need to
yeah,
get to the
Tom
microphone.
Blackstone couldn't be here today. So I just wanted to say, I don't know if it's pertinent, but I wanted to mention it, that while they were very clear where they stood, other information has come to light. And I personally had a conversation with the pastor, Tom Blackstone, and he would like to have a conversation with the Bacchus group. And he's out of town, he's not accessible this week, but he has, the way he put it, is there could be some shifting sands here that could change
well,
the tenor
again,
of the position.
I
don't
guess
know.
I can't reiterate enough that we're commenting right now on the original
Okay,
proposal
that's
that was
fine.
sent to us.
But we were putting into the record what the church had said, so all I wanted to say is because
And
he
they were
couldn't-
opposed to this proposal.
That is absolutely correct,
We
they were.
received a letter, so
They
that's,
were.
what Hillary was talking about.
Okay, he was not here, and he asked me to just say that for him, and I
Yeah.
didn't know when to
So
insert
again,
it.
Yeah,
we
any,
are-
any group could certainly submit another proposal with another
Okay.
plan.
That was good, okay, that was one of the questions. And he thought he could, so I wanted you to be aware of that, that's all.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Section 2. Establishes rezoned areas that are consistent with the existing and permitted use of the original zone. So, actually, I guess we have to do the other.
There are
two
some other
parcels.
uses.
I'm sorry?
There are some other uses we have to look at as well.
Yeah, so on section 1, I didn't do the office or
Right.
So does the comprehensive plan, what does the comprehensive plan say about using the office building on the parcel?
I would say that as far as the goals under housing, is that what we're talking about? I'd say that office use would meet this criteria. For the office building and with typical business hours, I think that it would be
Yeah.
something that would easily.
It certainly, hopefully wouldn't violate it.
Jim, I have a question about how, so the property, it's in residential B,
Right.
which does not have the same exclusions as residential D, which says no offices can be
Right.
had, right?
So that's when we get to 2, and we're talking about comparing the proposed use with the permitted and existing uses in the
Okay.
district. So we get to that then. But for
Okay.
right now, when you're talking about balancing the economic development needs, the housing needs, the recreational needs, all the various policies and goals, how is that implicated by this proposal?
Yep.
And then in the second part, we'll talk about the actual zoning and the actual uses.
I just thought that might shape our discussion because we're kind of uncertain as to what will go in that office space. So it might be hard to comment on how it fulfills or doesn't fulfill things within the comprehensive plan if we, you know what I mean? Like, if they can't have offices there, then we shouldn't be saying how office space will benefit the community. I was just asking for verification that it's okay to be used as office space.
If it's rezoned, it would be okay.
Yeah.
And the-
Okay.
But
So as the proposed uses, it would be okay if it's approved.
Okay,
So
got
the
it.
question under this is more, how does that proposal line up with the goals and policies that the city has set out under comprehensive plan? And then the second part is going to be, how does this proposal mesh with the existing uses that are there?
Yeah.
And those that are
Okay.
permitted under the current zoning ordinance? And even if you
I
were to
got it.
rezone it, how does it fit? So we're on that first piece.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I look at the comprehensive plan, a lot of these sections that we talk about, for instance, the demographics and creating a city that's a great place to live, raise a family and grow a business, I don't necessarily see the office spaces detracting from that goal. And there are some other goals throughout the comprehensive plan that would meet the goals of those. And I did not see any specific goals or policies in the comprehensive plan that this would be a negative impact on any of those. So.
Any other comments from the planning board on that, on the office space? We all in agreement then that the office space would be in
Yeah,
line with the comprehensive plan?
it's creating new business opportunities, which is in demographics. So,
Okay.
yep. And there are some other items. Jim, I don't know if you need us to actually go through and find them.
It'd be helpful so that I can draft that and bring it back. I anticipate there'll be no motions this evening voted on. We're getting direction from you. We'll
Yeah.
bring back a document, and then you can go through this at the next meeting, if that makes sense.
You're really gonna make me earn that vacation I'm taking in September, huh, Jim?
Certainly under local economy for the office building, there's quite a few goals in there that this would support. I think those are the big ones, local economy
Yeah,
and
local.
demographics.
Okay. And now the rectory section of the property, which is probably the easiest one. I haven't seen anything in the comprehensive plan that states keeping the rectory as a housing, single-family housing would violate the comprehensive plan. Does anybody have different?
No, not at all. It meets goals in demographics, in housing. Yeah.
I guess the question I might have is, could that be turned into a two-family? Or is it just a single housing?
It depends on the number of square feet in the lot.
Okay. Just was curious if that ever came up, and, because it's certainly it had multiple people in there in the past, obviously, as a rectory, so, thank you.
If the zoning were changed as requested, would there be different uses for that residential building from say a single-family home, and then we do this contract zoning, and now it could become something else?
Well, the way the language was written, the zoning that the council sent back to you, it specifically says office use for, I'm sorry, that was
Single
for-
family.
Single family.
Single family,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So what the council said specifically says single family, so.
So if they wanted it anything else, they'd have to come and get approval.
Yeah.
Right.
Good.
Okay. Are we set with section 1 now?
I think you're set.
I love this. Section 2 establishes rezoned areas that are consistent with existing and permitted uses in the original zone. Okay. So. I know, April, you did.
Okay,
the
should I
reason-
just?
Yeah, why don't you?
All right. There's information that's in the document already about activities that occurred at the church and how frequently that they happened. And do I need to go into detail on that, or we're just gonna?
Yeah, so we're doing it by section again. So the church first, and then the office, and then the rectory, so.
Does everybody have access to that? So I don't need to like read it out loud, or?
No, I don't think so.
Well, this was information that was presented by Planning Board member Chiraboka at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And so it's something that everyone was aware of. It was stated in public, and so I added it in here as part of the ongoing draft to talk about the existing uses or recently existing uses on the property.
So the planning board finds that the proposed event center of the existing church building on the property is, we need to choose either consistent or inconsistent with the existing and permitted uses in the original zone for the following reasons, and list some reasons, so.
Okay. So we have a little more data at our fingertips here today. I think you all have this very small font. I apologize for that. I was trying to get it so that you could see everything at a glance.
I have extra copies.
It was actually smaller. Someone did me the favor of putting it on legal paper, which was delightful. Thank you to whoever was responsible for that. Yes, thank you. Back there. Okay. So you can peruse the list. Some salient points that are relevant to our discussion. We can see that the types of businesses here don't serve alcohol, which is also something that we have talked about in the operation of the Catholic Church. which there was some discussion about Catholics having wine available, and I would like to say that that's the blood of Christ, having been raised Catholic, so let's not really go there. Okay, so. Yeah, right. One would hope not. Yes. Okay. Okay. So that was salient point number one. Number two, the closing times. You can see there are a variety of opening and closing times. I maybe should have a footnote on here, where some of the businesses had different closing times on different days. I chose the latest closing time when that happened. So these are the latest closing times. Some of them may have, like, the KMD florist, I'm not sure, may be 4 o'clock some days to 5 another. So these are the maximum time periods that they could be open on any given day. We can see that there's all variety of days. So there's no, restricting only to weekends or anything like that. The hours, we're seeing pretty much open of work day is pretty typical, somewhere between 7 and 9. As far as closing times go, let's see what I said. None of the businesses have closed after 8 p.m. And I think if we counted up, 22 of the 25 of them actually closed by 5. So there's the matter of the office hours. Right, then also none of the businesses contract zone commercial A in residential areas, which are these here, can be described as an eating establishment or place offering dancing or entertainment. So when we're talking about type, we don't really see that in these contract zones, which, if I can just back up a second, this list is all properties in Waterville that have been contract zoned to commercial A from a residential zone. So that's what that parent zone is. Okay. So in those sorts of contract zone situations, we aren't seeing establishments open after 8 p.m. eating, dancing, or entertainment, or serving alcohol. Okay. Then I have number 4 here. And this would be more useful if you actually had a map. But if you're familiar with the KMD strip, where there was an entire block, you'll notice that's the KMD block. It's CZA 2. And that is pretty much all the properties between Cool Street and First Rangeway. That's why they're all CZA number 2. So the KMD florist down to Adams Speech Therapy, those are all within that block. If you've ever been there, KMD is a very busy commercial street, and it actually looks onto a commercially zoned area. And the city had to make a decision. They had to make a decision whether they were going to say, you know what, this is a commercial district, and so we're gonna zone it commercial now. Which I can see there being an argument for that. But it decided at the time that I went and I read the ordinance, and they made the decision that they were actually going to treat it like the residential block it was coming out of to the north side. So you've got Merrifield just behind those businesses, and they decided that it is written as a condition of the contract zone that activities should not detract from the residential character of property on Merrifield. So I think that just kind of demonstrates then that the city was interested at that time favoring preserving residential areas, even when there could have been a very good argument for flipping that commercial. Okay, so I feel like that covers this spreadsheet here. Yep.
Uriah?
So I think that covers existing use.
Of the church.
Existing uses of the commercial, the current commercial A zone existing. And then we would just probably need to touch on permitted uses. What, are there hours? I mean, a commercial A zone, I think something like Is it Z3? You know, the factories like that?
T3.
What is it called over there in the old Wyandotte building? Anyways, right on the corner of Trafton Road and
Yeah.
West River Road, you know, they operate
F3.
24 hours a day. Is it F3? Sorry. But, you know, they could, in a commercial A zone, potentially you could operate 24 hours a day if it were manufacturing. Is that?
Well, what we may want to do is bring this back just a little bit, because our focus has to be this zone, this residential B zone. And so you're looking to
Okay.
see, is the proposed event center, we'll take it piece by piece, is the proposed event center use,
With this zone?
yeah, is it
Not the
consistent
proposed zone.
with the existing uses in this zoning district and with the permitted uses in this zoning district?
Okay.
The existing uses, I think the testimony was, and I'm not trying to, well, I'll try to summarize it. I believe it was mostly that it's mostly residential and some churches. It seems to be what the existing uses in that zoning district would be. So if you compare the proposed event center use, the hours of operation, the service of alcohol, just the days of operation with the existing residential neighborhood, the
Okay.
existing churches, whatever else is existing there, I hope I didn't miss anything. What's your observation based on what you've heard and what you've seen in your review?
Okay, thank you. I was looking at the permitted and
I
use for
understand.
the proposed change. So thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Does anyone want to comment on whether the church is consistent or inconsistent with the current use of the residential B zone?
I think that would, for an event center, that would be obviously,
Inconsistent.
yeah, inconsistent with it.
Yeah, certainly what was sent to us
What was sent
is-
to us,
is
yeah.
not consistent with permitted uses or existing uses.
Of the
And
original zone.
we have to give a couple reasons, so.
On the existing uses, the residential, the churches, what's the inconsistency there?
You know, late night hours, serving alcohol, and increase in traffic. Parking.
Now, portions of this are in residential B, portions are in residential D. In residential B, some of those permitted uses include community living arrangements, public and private schools, public service facilities, public utility and communications installations, and special exceptions include daycare centers, home occupations, and bed and breakfast inns. In the D section, where the event center itself is located, it also includes special exception uses, professional offices and occupations, but not for properties abutting Gilman and Pleasant Streets. So that's what's there. Is this consistent, inconsistent with those permitted uses, the residential, the,
I would say that the hours of operation are inconsistent with those uses,
mhm. Okay.
as is serving alcohol.
So if we turn away from the event center, if that summarizes the
Yep.
discussion, and we turn to the office use. The offices are located, as I understand it, and Ann will correct me if I'm wrong, they're in residential B, as in boy.
Yep,
Um,
on Gilman.
Well, it's residential D where Gilman and Pleasant are a factor. In residential B, offices aren't permitted. What are permitted are single-family, two-family, multifamily dwellings, and then as home occupations, daycare centers as special exceptions, and bed and breakfast inns. So is the idea of an office consistent with those existing uses and permitted uses?
No.
What is that building currently, or was it
It's
being
used
used
as,
for?
I understand, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that had been used as the church office building. So it was tied to the church use.
Sure.
Yeah,
It was the diocese office. It was
Yeah.
not for that church.
Okay,
it was for the
Okay.
all Catholic diocese.
All Catholic diocese in Kennebec County.
fair enough, thank you.
I feel like that would potentially be grandfathered in if it was an office.
Right, one of those that falls under existing but not permitted.
Yeah.
I assume that.
Sounds
was
kind of
that or-
funny, but
But if it's
what it
currently
is.
vacant or not being used, I don't know.
But
whether-
also churches themselves were a permitted use in that district,
Right.
so that the church office
I see.
would seem to be
Right.
an accessory use, even if it was for the diocese.
Sure.
Is it possible to say that it's inconsistent with the zoning of the residential B? However,
Since it's moved, I would say that it's no longer, being used as an office, and
I
it,
mean, the other problem that I have with this is the way this reads is it says that there can't be any offices, it can only be home offices. But this isn't a home, it's an office, and it's already built. So
Right.
I think that makes it kind of tricky.
And there are limits on a home occupation.
Right,
it's-
that's what it's saying, is with the limits, it's not more than 500 square feet or 25% of the owner-occupied home. This is never going to be an owner-occupied home, and the building already exists. So, I don't know how council would recommend we deal with that, but
do we have an ordinance or a rule regarding prior uses, and if they can be, I mean, I understand it was a church office. They've moved out and there's no longer churches allowed. But then it says this, professional offices and occupations, but not for properties abutting Pleasant and Gilman Streets.
Right. And that would be if it
Which
were
would-
in residential D, and it's not.
Oh,
It's
I
in
see.
residential B,
Okay.
right? No, you're right. It says that for residential D, but this office space that we're talking about that was used by the
Is
diocese
residential B.
is in B. And so what you could say is that I'm thinking out loud here, this is the board's, not me, but I think to try to explain it, the office use, you would say, is inconsistent with the zoning for residential B. Although there once was a grandfathered office space there, as a new commercial office space, this is larger than would be allowed as a home occupation, and so it's not consistent with residential B. Is that-
could we make a recommendation that be changed to residential D?
Then it wouldn't
That's not the
comply.
application in front of you.
Yeah,
we
but
have
it
to own
actually
We're-
says that you
you're-
can't have offices on Gilman Street either for the
Okay.
residential D zone.
Okay.
Even if you were to zone it to residential D, it would have that issue. So, but I mean, the application in front of you is to put that into commercial A and to rent out that office space. So the question is that consistent with the existing uses? And you've said no.
No.
And is it consistent with permitted uses? And you've said no.
No.
Right.
Okay.
I do think we should maybe put in there, though, that it was.
It was, right, that it was grandfathered at one
Yeah.
time.
Then what, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. What happens to that building then? If they can't, what else, am I just not, I know, we shouldn't be like spinning
Yeah, I mean,
ideas,
there's-
but anyway.
That's outside of our purview today.
Okay,
For another day.
okay.
Yeah.
If this doesn't go. And so then, finally, the rectory.
Rectory.
So the rectory.
And the proposal is for using that as a single-family dwelling.
Mhm.
And that would really be consistent.
Consistent
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
residential D zone.
I think that's in residential D as in dog as well.
Yep.
All right, okay.
Right.
Consistent with residential D, which is the zone, and is that consistent with the neighborhood, the existing uses in the zone?
I
Which-
would say
Yes.
so.
Okay. There are several conditions that were proposed attached to this use in order to make it consistent, to ensure consistency with the comprehensive plan. And the requirement is that those be related to the physical development or operation of the rezoned property. So the question is does each of those serve those functions? So you got to pull out that city order, that council order.
In this alternate conditions and recommendations part, the recommendation that Rian had given about if the use changes, they have to come back, it reverts back to,
we could talk
rather
about
than
that.
the sale
We could
of the
talk about
building?
that there.
Sale of the building? I think that makes the most sense. And I think that that's what the council was getting at. I don't
Is that
think-
not a requirement? If the use changes, that they, I mean, don't they have to come back for a change of use no matter what?
Yes.
They might need that as site plan anyway, if they were to engage in a change of use. But this is a separate question that had been asked. That's what happens when you have too many drafts. Okay, I have the resolution here.
I was gonna make a draft joke, a beer joke, but I'll refrain.
That too is for another time.
It's almost that time, huh, Uriah?
Might go viral.
But Uriah is correct, they can't do anything, they would not be allowed to do anything that they're not given permission to do in this rezoning. So if they wanted to do something different, they would have to come back to the council and the planning board for a revision to the contract.
Okay.
And do we have a copy of that city council resolution right at our fingertips?
My file list is thick as yours.
I might, actually.
People say that attorneys get paid by the pound, maybe.
I was
this-
just gonna say.
Yeah.
This one.
Those, looking for the actual ordinance as it got kicked back.
Oh.
I know. it's
Because
wrong.
that has the conditions,
that
and
it?
we're just
No,
trying to
this is the
ensure that
wrong.
those conditions are consistent.
This is
I know, it's not just fancy cookie paper.
You don't have that at City Hall.
All right, I have it.
You found it.
I found it. The following conditions of the contract are intended to preserve the residential character of the surrounding neighborhood, and that talks about permitted uses. It limited permitted uses to the church parcel being used as an event center only, subject to certain conditions, that the office would be rented as office space, including for commercial use. The church rectory would be used as a single-family residence, and church parking lot would continue to be used as a parking lot only. This is the condition that had been commented upon sale of the property. The zoning will revert back to the original zoning, and the concept was that if use changes, or is to change it, it reverts back. Maximum occupancy based upon parking spaces. There are 300 spaces and 3 persons per on-site parking space, so they were talking about 100 people being the maximum, 100 parking spaces, 3 persons per space, so 300 person maximum. Do you want to make that clear that it's 300 persons rather than requiring us all to do the math?
Yes.
Hours of operation. What's been proposed, 11 p.m. Sunday through Friday and 7 a.m. Through midnight on Saturday. That's related to operation. Again, we're saying you didn't like those hours of operation and didn't find them consistent. It's just this is one of the conditions. alcohol consumption is allowed, site plan review is required, which brings them back in front of this board when it's time to revise this building. Parking lot, driveways and parking would be set back at least 5 feet from all property lines. Curbing would be added along street lines to direct traffic flow. Landscape berms to be installed along city street lines as needed to prevent headlights from shining into homes. And exiting traffic shall be diverted to the intersection on Middle Street and North Street. Those are all related to operations and that's what we're looking at, to see whether these are related, not whether we like them or whether the board likes them. Screening, a solid 6-foot fence or compact evergreen hedge planted and maintained to attain a height of not less than 6 feet within 5 years shall be installed along property lines abutting parking lots unless the planning board approves an alternate landscaping plan that provides adequate screening. That would be something you'd see at site plan if it were to come back. Existing plantings shall be retained where feasible to provide a visual buffer for abutting properties. Dumpsters shall be fenced and set back at least 5 feet from all property lines and at least 20 feet from all buildings. Lighting in the parking lot shall comply with section 4.3.16 of the zoning ordinance. Sign, there shall be only one sign, and the size of the sign shall be restricted to the size of the sign on site as of June 7, 2021. All site improvements shall be installed prior to issuance of an occupancy permit. These were all conditions that were added by the council on, or would be added by the council on the permitted use to try to make it consistent. The question is, are these only related to physical development or operation of the rezoned property? They are, it seems. So we'll just, if you want, I can summarize them, a list of those here.
Okay.
And then
Those go in the
that would
alternative
go under number
conditions?
3. Those would go on number 3. And the finding is they do. We don't agree with them, but with them all.
Okay.
Okay. So that gets to alternative conditions and recommendations. And again, I have that first one to 1E, that if the property changes, change of the use, it comes back. Other conditions and recommendations that the board
Just a nitpicking.
Sure.
Here, the use can't change unless it comes back first.
Correct.
So Jim, what is it that we need to be putting in this this part B?
Anything we want.
But is this like what we would suggest in order to approve it, or like?
Yeah, that was intended to be a, are there things that could be changed that would allow you to approve it?
Okay.
And again, though, you know, you're making a recommendation on that, which is before you.
Yeah.
You could leave that blank, or you could just say that that one condition at least needs to be changed if it were to be approved, which you don't recommend, or you do, or you don't recommend, and it's the ultimate vote we'll take next time.
Okay.
I'll fix that up. I understand what you need, and we'll get this to you in a better state of affairs to review and act on it. One item that came up, and that's in C, is the traffic plan. When the city council sent that back here for this board to consider, it wanted to be sure a traffic study would be conducted, and thought that one might be required even at this level of Bacchus, but said it would leave it up to the planning board. Going through the ordinance and going through the conditions that the council was putting on in this draft that it sent back for your review, it requires site plan review. And in site plan review, there has to be a showing that the proposal will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion. And there's an initial check by the developer with the city engineer to see if anything is needed and whether a traffic study is needed. So traffic will be examined in site plan. And if a study is required, if it meets the requirements, then one will be required, and not at least is going to be reviewed by the city. So my suggestion is that the planning board might say we don't need to do that traffic study now. If it comes back to us, if it's rezoned by the council and if it comes back to us for that application for site plan, we'll check the box at that point. And so if that seems appropriate, that's how I'd write that up for you.
Agreed.
Okay.
Everybody good with that?
And I think that gives us enough to work on so that we won't be taking vacations right away in order to make sure that this gets back to the planning board in time. So my recommendation is no motions or actions tonight. We have direction from the board, so we can take this back, prepare a draft, and get it back to you to take a look at, and to all the public and to the parties as well, the applicant. Everyone can review it before the next meeting, and that next meeting is going to be
September 14th, I believe. Let me just confirm that. Yes, September 14th.
And the public hearing closed.
No one's officially closed the public hearing. You may want to take that step unless you want to take additional comment. That's entirely up to the board.
Because we have 30 days after public
Correct.
hearing closes.
If you close that public hearing tonight, you have 30 days to issue that report and recommendation to the city council. If you do that, if you close the public hearing tonight, today being the 24th, meeting on the 14th would do it just fine. You'd be within that 30-day window.
Now, question though, we can still, if we don't close the public hearing part, and our next meeting, we take a vote, we can close it at that point in time, correct?
You could. It's entirely up to the board.
I mean, my feeling, maybe people's are different here, but
I think we should close it. I think that we've gone through this and we're pretty close to, I think that this draft will be finalized and that we'll be making we'll be bringing it to a vote. I'm fairly confident on that. We'll be able to make a recommendation to the council and move this through without further discussion. I don't think that any further discussion by the public is going to change whether it meets the comprehensive plan or not, and that was our only job.
My only thing is that until we see what comes to us, I think the public has a right to see in writing what, you know, our solicitor is going to present to us that we're going to be voting on. I don't expect we're going to have a lot of discussion on it, but I think that it's important that people have a say.
I think we should ask then, because everyone's here tonight, if there's any further public discussion, then anything that we've just discussed here is going to be the same thing that's going in that final draft.
But
and we should discuss it.
We haven't seen the final draft, though.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
until we see that.
Thank you, Bruce. We're not going
yeah.
to go back and forth and do this.
Correct. I
So,
Sorry,
could I also, I have a question.
Can I speak?
Yeah,
Thanks.
after you.
So, I think what we're going to do is have, the public has gone through and heard our comments on the memo that we've been drafting. You've heard sort of where we stand on certain sections. If you have a comment about this memo that we are writing right now, then this is your final chance to say those.
Sam.
I think that,
Sam, Hillary has her hand.
oh, Hillary, I'm sorry, I can't see the hand, so.
Oh, right, that's what David's
Hillary.
for. Two quick points. First of all, did I understand correctly? We're not necessarily looking to make recommendations yet about what was recommended necessarily by the city council. Is that right?
I don't understand your question, I'm sorry.
Okay, so for example, if I understand it as it is right now, the owners would have 5 years to construct like a privacy fence. Is that right?
No.
Yeah.
5 years
That's what
to
he just read. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I heard a couple of people say a couple of different things. I just want to make sure that I understood
We're looking
correctly.
We're just trying to clarify.
Right.
Yep.
Well, we're saying that, yeah, within 5 years, there would be the 6-foot fence that would be planted. That's one of the conditions that the council has in their order that was sent back to us for our review.
But so my question is, are we really looking to get into the nitty-gritty right now to say, hey, we wouldn't want that? Do we want to do that now, or were we waiting to put that off? Because if it looked like we as a planning board were going to say, this doesn't seem consistent with the comprehensive plan, but there was just one issue that we thought needed to be changed, then that would be our recommendation. Right. If we were saying there were too many things that were inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, then maybe we were going to make a list of many things, but maybe we weren't. So I guess that was one of the things, for example, that I would think would need to be changed, but I just wasn't sure if now was the time that we wanted to get into it or not.
This was, yeah, it's interesting. Well, this was sent back for review under the 3 standards of state law and under your ordinance, which adopts state law. And, so one of them is consistency with the comprehensive plan. The other is consistency with the existing and permitted uses. And the third is that all the conditions that are attached are related to the operation of the property. And so the question here is not, do you like these, but are these conditions that the council has proposed and sent back to us related to the operation and use and management of the property? The answer is yes. They may not be your preference. And you might say that, yes, these are related. However, if, in a perfect world, we would change this one. And a person this evening, suggested that we change one, and that's something that the board has asked to be put down on the order. So.
Right, okay. That's fine. And then my second point, Samantha, I think was we were holding a hearing to get public opinion about this whole project. We weren't holding a hearing to get people's opinion on what we were going to write on the memo. And I feel like what I heard Planning Board member Bruce White saying is we wanted to give people a chance to weigh in on the memo. And if that's what we want to do, then maybe that's what we want to do. But that feels like a whole nother meeting with a whole nother hearing. And so, I'm not sure that seems worthwhile. I feel like our hearing was to get input from the community, and then our job is to write a memo based on the information that we gathered from the community. So I think giving people an opportunity to say something now is great. But I feel pretty strongly, once we've heard what people have to say, we've got to get together and write it. And dragging it out doesn't seem to be worthwhile.
I'm fine whatever direction we go. I just wanted to express that there is confusion on what is going to be in it, and until we see it, it's going to be a little difficult to decipher. So I just thought maybe there would be some last input, but I'm fine with whatever direction we go in. I would, if we're going to have comments, you said closing comments, obviously, I would like to hear from the developer at some point.
If they'd like to give closing comments, then
Correct.
They're welcome to. Okay, so I believe you had your hand up first, sir. Did you still want to speak?
The only thing I was...
You have to come up to the microphone, sorry.
The only couple of items that we spoke about
It's an inconvenience.
Last meeting.
Can we get a name, please?
My name is Richard Trefethen. I'm a trustee of the Methodist Church, and I'm also at 50 Pleasant Street, the condo, which we represent 9 units. So the families, which is just above, almost directly across from our church. And our church is looking right onto the... And I suggested that knowing, as long as we've been there, the traffic that we had run into, the problems with the 2 churches, if we had a wedding or a funeral, we found ourselves, our parking lot, not able to take it. The streets are covered, and they were asking for 300 parking places just for this new development, which I know is not there. Maybe
So
150. but-
100 parking spaces is what they're asking for, which accounts for 300, it's three people per every
Yeah.
one car, so
I'm-
300
yeah,
occupancy.
I answer my 84-year
That's okay.
old mind. I know, and I at that time asked if we could submit anything, or we could help out by notifying what we run into already for traffic. And the roads on both sides, you know, the people don't park in the parking lots when there's a wedding or funeral, they use the street. When they use the street right in front of us at 50 Pleasant Street, when they make the turn, that's blocked down to one-way traffic during that whole procedure. We could not take care of the traffic under the conditions when both churches were operating. And I think we're gonna find ourselves in that situation again. So the only question that I had is, has the planning board done anything at all about checking out the traffic?
What we did on our recommendation, Richard, is it doesn't conform with the comprehensive plan. So we're making a recommendation to the council, and the council is going to make they're going to make a decision. If we go to vote at the next council meeting, then that'll go to the council, and the council will be where you'd probably want to address those concerns. We've addressed them in our recommendation, that this memo that we're drafting now, final draft, that's been addressed.
I see, okay. Just that I brought that up, several of us brought that up, and I didn't see that it was really spoke on here at the meeting tonight. I felt a little, just to clear my own mind, we're offered to help out if it's possible to give you anything, information as to how
We appreciate
how
it.
we are now.
Yeah.
And right now, with all the construction, we have one-way traffic on that road. right
Sure.
now. Just one-way traffic.
Yeah, so the city
Thank you for your
council.
time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The city council deals with parking issues, but I wonder, Jim, if we could put something in there that if they were to rezone this property to maybe look at the parking on Pleasant Street, maybe it should only be on one side of the street, or how that would impact, because it is definitely an issue and it's come up a lot.
We'll add it.
Okay,
I just have one question.
you have to come to Mike's. I know it's an inconvenience.
Okay, hey, Jeff Carter, 1 Middle Street. Just one question about the fencing, like you said before. To put up a putting up a business and then giving them 5 years to put up a buffer, I think
It's
is,
not-
did we read that wrong?
I'm sorry. It says, now
Says
I've
up
lost
to
it.
5
A
years, I thought.
6-foot-high fence or a compact evergreen hedge planted and maintained to a height of not less than 6 feet within 5 years. So in other words, the
Yep.
fence has to be planted right away, but you have 5 years for
Okay, so,
the trees to grow. So in
should
other
that
words,
be
you have
changed,
to.
or it's, I mean, it's a little bit, to me, that sounds like two lawyers could fight 25 minutes on that. It doesn't say that the fence needs to be put up prior to opening, and then,
And
then have to
that
you know
would
what I'm
be
saying?
reviewed
It
in the
reads
site
like it
plan
should
review.
be 5 years, is what
Yeah.
that's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
that's-
So is that something I should bring up now, or bring up at the city council?
It would actually
We
be brought
appreciate
up
it.
again at the site plan review
Okay, all right, I'll be
if
quiet.
it came up there, so.
No, I want to get this meeting done too. I was just asking, I just want to make sure.
Mayor
I still
Coelho.
have my say in that. Okay.
Yes, the site plan review, and we could change that during the site plan
Okay,
review as
okay,
well.
Very good, thank you.
So, a couple of things. A, David, your wife says bring home dessert. Number two, this is gonna come back to the council, that they're gonna have to discuss at some point. When they sent it to you, I believe it asked for reasons why. Are you gonna put in the memo reasons why? One of the things I'm asking for is, and I haven't heard in the last couple of meetings, is compromise. So, one of the things I'm looking for is times, like, is there a time that you would allow them to be open? Is that going to come in the report?
Would the council need to send that to us? Would they be the ones to determine that?
No, but
We already sent it to them.
in each.
We sent it to them originally and they amended it,
Okay.
so.
I mean, in
and-
each section, right, like we've gone through, so in the first section, we said it doesn't fit the existing uses because the existing use of the neighborhood is not open until midnight. Like,
But do you have an additional alternative for the council to consider? I mean, April did a good
I
job.
mean, we
That
could
list
say
that-
in the alternative conditions that we want it to close at 5 when every other business closes.
The only reason I say that is because I think that would be helpful for the city council.
Okay.
For them to have something where they have some guidance going forward. I think this has gone back and forth a few times because there, hasn't been guidance from the city council, and then coming back from the planning board, there's some stuff being lost in translation. I mean,
So I think that's where, in that alternative conditions and recommendations that Jim has created, where we could put that in
I
there.
would be comfortable with recommending our original recommendation.
Which
as
is
the
fine.
alternative.
but like I said, I
Conditions.
just, when it comes back to them, I'd like them to see something other than blank. That was it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry, coming up to the microphone. So apologies, well, first of all, Lyndall Beatty, I'm just a resident. And I was late to the meeting, but was there any discussion and/or is there anything in the comprehensive plan about noise ordinances? And then whether the proposal the memo coming back to you, is that one of the ways that it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan, the proposal? I didn't hear any mention of noise.
I could take a stab at this one, but there's already a noise ordinance,
So then.
and they're not asking for that to be changed or adjusted. So that's why we didn't talk about it.
But the noise levels do change going from residential B or D into commercial A. They go up. And I think that's what she's getting at.
Yeah, and also I was just wondering whether there was a noise study then conducted, like, that was part of
Well,
the
and that's nothing,
proposal?
and that wouldn't be something the city would do. That would be something that
Well,
we might be able to say at a site plan review.
Would need then.
Right.
Right.
That could be a condition of approving the site plan. So,
Okay. All right.
thank you.
Thank you. And do you have any information on, off the top of my head, cannot rattle off the noise restrictions
Yeah.
in the city? Do you know?
Yes. There are different decibel levels depending on which type of use.
Okay.
And the noise has to be at lower between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Okay.
And is that the same across all
zones?
Yes.
zones?
Yeah.
So
So it's the same across all zones?
The hours are the same, the decibel limits are different for each zone, so a little
Okay.
more noise is allowed in commercial and industrial than in residential.
So perhaps a good alternative condition would be that they have to meet the noise requirements of the residential D zone.
They're going to be coming in for site plan approval at any rate, but,
I would agree with that, Sam.
okay.
Okay. Any other further comments? Yeah, Tommy?
So a couple of things. First, in April's memo regarding the office, she talks about 2 people working in that office from 2 to 4, Monday through Thursday, which I don't know who you spoke to or what questions you asked, but it seems that is an incredibly biased bit of research. And And I talked about this last time, but I would like that not to be in the memo to the city council. That office, if you walk to that office, there are 9 offices in that building. Each one has a title on the door. There's a conference table. There's 2 bathrooms. There's a reception area with 2 receptionist stations. That is not a 2-person office. It wasn't built for that. It wasn't used as that. It was as they were winding down and moving their operation. But to say, oh, it's a 2-person office is very misleading.
Should I wait to respond to these things? Okay.
The email that we sent you all, I know you don't want to talk about it because it sounds like a new plan, but it's a plan that still kind of requires the same zoning change. But we are looking at bringing in nonprofits, bringing back the soup kitchen, and we would like to see the whole thing used for that purpose, but I can't make those requests here because I don't have commitments yet from anybody. So there's good conversations happening, but I don't have commitment, so I can't change my request to y'all. But I think even if all of that went through, we still need the zoning change, and we need that office to be rentable. And I don't know if there's a difference between renting an office to a building, to a business, or renting an office to a nonprofit. If that makes a difference in the residential zone, I don't know. I kind of think it should. It was a church. It was a community. It was a gathering center, a community gathering center. If our intention were to turn it back into that, and as you've all covered, that office is a useless building. The church would have very limited uses if it wasn't an event center. And I don't think the city wants to tell the Catholic diocese that their property is worthless and unusable. I don't think that's a good precedent to set. People keep talking about compromise and compromise and compromise. And from day one, we have made compromises. The number one compromise being that we're buying a building with a capacity for 1,400 people. According to the fire code, we can have 1,400 people in there. The neighbors' number one concern, first thing, was parking. If I was a neighbor in that community, I would be very concerned about parking as well. Our first compromise was to limit it to 300 people, not because of fire code, because the fire code allows 1,400. But because that's how much parking we had. We knew we could manage the parking and keep the cars on our property, not on the street. When the church was there, they didn't do that. The church across the street doesn't do that. But we said right from the beginning that we would take that on. We would hire engineers to redesign the parking, maximize that space, hire valets, supervise the parking space, change the entrances, take the entrance completely off of Pleasant Street, so cars weren't stopping and blocking traffic on Pleasant Street as they turned in. The entrance to the church is inside on the parking lot side, so it wouldn't be inviting for people to park on Pleasant Street. And we're still looking at other options. When we started this project, I was looking for a house. I was moving to Waterville, I was looking for a house, that's all it was. And we found this property in a real estate listing. Loved the building, had conversations with people about the building and about St. Francis, and it's way too expensive for me. But we kept going back to it and looking at it and looking at it. And we thought, the three of us sat down and thought, well, what could we do with it? Based on what we have for finances, if we pool our resources, and what we have as a skill set. What do we do? So we had a whole list of businesses, things that could possibly generate enough money to pay for the building and satisfy a bank when we went to get the mortgage. We went through and we had a list, and again, based on our experience and what we can do. So as we whittled down the list, based on expenses and, needs for sprinkler systems and that kind of thing, we landed on an event center. We can do that. We've got the skill and the experience to do an event center. That's how we landed on it. We did not come to Waterville to open an event center. But we love the building and we thought we could do something to save it, and how do we pay for it? We landed on an event center. Other things are fleshing out now. I have no experience in nonprofit. The joke was when we bought it was, well, I'll just start my own cult. It's church. I'll start my own cult. But I have no experience in nonprofit. I'm getting an education, and it is looking possibly viable, which I would not have thought of. It wouldn't have popped into my mind. I have no experience with nonprofit. But listening to the neighbors and talking to people in the community, this is turning out to be a possible viable option. But I still think the property, in order to do even that, the property still needs to be rezoned to commercial. And the office building needs to be rentable. And we may still want to hold events there, which would probably mainly be fundraising for the nonprofits. So it doesn't really change the plan. I think it fleshes out the idea a little bit more fully. And with having two nonprofits, they're paying rent and taking care of their own leasehold improvements. It takes the pressure off of us to have to make a lot of money at an event center. So we wouldn't need nearly as many events. And we might be able to compromise on the hours. It can't be 5 o'clock. I couldn't host a Chamber of Commerce meeting or Chamber of Commerce event closing at 5 o'clock. I couldn't host this meeting if we closed at 5 o'clock. But those are some things that could be community-oriented and used in the building. And that was what was in the email that we sent to y'all. And
Sorry, I think I just threw out 5 o'clock because that's what they had said. But I think what we had suggested, he put in the alternative was our original suggestion, which was 9 o'clock on the weeknights and 10 on weekends. I can't remember now. Heard so many times. What was it, Dave, that you suggested we change it to?
Our original suggestion?
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look at minutes.
I think that was about right.
I think that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
I also think that what we discussed about the office was that it doesn't currently meet the
permitted
uses for that zone. I don't think that anyone would have, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the council, but they're not going to let that building go unused. I don't think that anyone's going to have a problem with offices going into that building, and I see that as being a pretty reasonable, approval on their end. And I think that the nonprofits and some of the buzzing that I've heard about the soup kitchen and things, I think that that's really great and helpful too.
I would second that. I agree 100%. Unfortunately, the way some of the stuff is written is even if we were to approve this for what you had come for a use, you wouldn't be able to then do what you're talking about. It would have to go back through for approval because the use is changing, if I understand it correctly.
Well, but I guess a little bit, but it seems like there's room in your report to make recommendations aside from what was given to you by the city council. And like the mayor said, can you make alternative suggestions? One issue that keeps coming up is that it's going to be a bar. And I promise everyone, we have 2 restaurants that we could easily open a bar in. We don't do that because we don't want a bar. None of us want to run a bar. We don't like the bar business. So if you gave us a liquor license, I guess we could open whenever.
We don't give liquor license.
Well, I'm sorry. No, I know. You guys would make a recommendation that we can apply for one. But there could be a compromise where you say, you can have X amount of events, and you can only serve liquor at those events, period. No opening in between. You know, if say you said you can have 104 events, right? So 2 a week, max for the whole year. And you can only have your liquor license, you can only serve liquor at those events. You can't be, you know, open for any sort of business other than those events. That's something you could, for an example, that's something you could put in your recommendation. It's not just.
But then you wouldn't need a liquor license because you could use a catering service, right?
I don't need a liquor license. I could just do catering.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not trying to do that. We were trying to be above board. But you're right, we don't need your approval for liquor. Jennifer owns 2 restaurants that both have catering licenses. We didn't need this. We're not trying to be slimy about it. We were telling you what we wanted to do. There's a million workarounds. And like I said, if we wanted a bar, we would just open the bar. The extended hours were simply because we were so overextended. We have to not miss an opportunity to make money. I don't think many people are booking a wedding till 1 o'clock in the morning. But I didn't want to turn one down because of it. That's all that was. We didn't want to lose an opportunity to make money when we were going to have to make a lot of money to support this. Having nonprofits take up some of the space and have not all the renovations on us, have it on them, then that eases that. So anyway, that's where we're at. I appreciate you letting me ramble on.
Thank you.
I did want to say, thank you for giving more information about the office. I would like to say that spurious accusations of bias are inappropriate. I went in person, and I have it all here, 12th of July, spoke with Deb Herbert and Kim Sutty, and I am reporting what I was told. I am happy for more information. I always want more. I want numbers. I have a strong inclination to go by numbers and facts, laws. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I have no problem with your suggestion. If you would like that to be removed, I actually am not sure what part that is, but right. I just wanted to make that clear. No bias. I reported what I was told. Thank you. Thank you.
I think that it has to be in there, though, you know, that, because we have to answer what they've given us to whether it meets the comprehensive plan or not. So I don't see that it can be removed about the offices.
Well, that was around the existing and permitted uses.
Right.
So.
Okay,
Well,
I see.
the property is what it is, and it may have had fewer users at the end. If there are 9 offices and 2 reception stations, and maybe that also should be included as part of it.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, okay. Can we bring in Hillary, please?
I'm really okay waiting. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm perfectly happy just waiting my turn. I had a follow-up question. So I appreciate the suggestion that they might be able to move in a different direction, but I just wanted to follow up with a question. There are no commitments from nonprofits to work with Bacchus, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what we were told.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it sounds great, but we can't respond to what could be. We have to respond to what is before us and what we know. I mean, again, it sounds exciting. I'd be happy to look at a proposal if you have one, when you have one, but we have to respond to what we have before us. So I just as a reminder to the planning board, because I know it was mentioned earlier, lots of exciting possibilities, but that's not what we've got in front of us right now.
Also, Tommy, just to kind of build off of that, we'll officially vote to send this to City Council on the 15th. and then it would be on their agenda 2 weeks from there. So we're talking
14th, but, right.
14th, yeah, sorry. I'm going on vacation the 15th, Jim.
That's what it is, okay.
So,
I don't think so,
so
Sam.
I think by the time it gets to council, you might have those commitments, right? And that might be something that you can tell them there.
We're trying to say now and you're ignoring us. Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You need to be recognized by the chair, and you have not been recognized by the chair. So, am I correct in that assumption, Jim, that?
This board has been tasked with coming up with a recommendation on what was referred by the council. At the same time, this board has, in the past heard options and certainly can comment on some of the options or some of the potential. But right now, there is no commitment. And at a point when there's a commitment, this is going to look somewhat different. And that would be a request to the council to send it back here to have a public hearing on that revised proposal. It doesn't prevent this board from making comments on some of the options that might be out there or some of the things that might be subject to discussion. But right now you have in front of you what you have in front of you, and the requirement of the ordinance is to give a report and a recommendation on what's been referred here.
Thank you.
So that's what we'll be working on for the 14th.
Does that kind of clarify?
Yes, but I feel like you guys can add things into recommendations. So
Can we have
Can you
the
come up
mic?
to the,
Yeah.
so Hillary can hear you, please?
Thanks.
So this is just the way that I understood it. You guys have an ordinance in front of you that you can vote on for, against, reasons why, yes, no. But there's room in there for you to make other recommendations. So like with the hours, the ordinance says till 11 and 12. You could say we reject 11 and 12.
Which we did.
We
And-
recommend 9 and 10.
Yeah.
But the same thing with the
Office building?
the office building, but also with the church, and say, like we don't want an event center, we don't want weddings, but we would support fundraisers, or just suggestions that you can put in there. My whole thing is if you discuss it here, city council can vote on it, as opposed to having to come back again.
I believe it's.
Okay, but Tom, I think the point that I was trying to make, and you're right, like I totally agree with you. If we want to make recommendations for different times, I'm with you on that. If we want to make suggestions to a certain degree that changes things ever so slightly, that's fine. What I heard you doing is almost changing your proposal entirely, particularly bringing in partners who haven't made a commitment to you. I can't recommend that you bring on partners who may or may not be ready to make a commitment. That would be inappropriate, and I think you understand that.
I'm not asking you to speak for them. I'm just saying you could put. It's fine. I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to have the conversation today so that it's been discussed, so that when it gets to the city council, there's something that's been discussed.
Right, but
I guess that's impossible. What I'm desperately trying to avoid is more planning board meetings. It's been like 12,
and I hear you,
12 of
but
them.
excuse me. What I'm not about to do is you've brought a proposal to us about what your plan is to do with the building. And I'm not about to say, well, why don't we change what you do with the building? That's not our job. But we could absolutely say, we could see within your proposal of what you'd like to do with the building, this is how we think it could work. And that I think is totally reasonable.
Perhaps, Jim, it might be pertinent, knowing information like soup kitchen, et cetera, that was a existing use of the church. So
Sure.
Can we put something in there for the council that would be something that would fall within the comprehensive plan and as an established and existing use?
I think that's fine. That's certainly something we can put into that draft. The important part is this. Under state law and under your local ordinance, and local ordinance has to follow state law, right? What happens is the public is given notice by mail, by publication, and you get in the mail a copy of what the proposed ordinance is. And that's what brought people here. This is what was referred by the city council. That's what this board is taking up and making a recommendation on. The public was not mailed a copy of the new and revised ordinance that is being discussed tonight, the proposal that's discussed tonight. So when people came here to talk, they came to talk about what the council referred, not to the changes. I think it's absolutely fine and appropriate to talk about the changes with the council, but if it's going to be changed, there really should be a new application, a new proposal filed with the council, kicked back here for a report. It doesn't have to take a long time. We've been through this dance already. I think that if we had to go through this again, it would happen relatively quickly. But at least everybody would know you'd gone through the process, and that should that should ensure that the public has had a say in what's going on. So that when it gets to the council stage, the council can look at it and say, yes, you know, or no, but yes, we want to rezone it and look like this. That's what we're trying to do here, is just make sure that the state law is being followed and the local ordinance is being followed. And so what's in front of the board tonight is what's been referred, and we understand the applicant would still like that acted upon, but that the applicant's pursuing alternatives. And certainly we can discuss the alternatives. We can discuss the parameters of some potential alternatives in our recommendations. But when there's an alternative, it has to come back here before the council can act on it. And so we'll get this done promptly. This board will meet on the 14th. We'll get this piece going promptly so we can go back to the council. And in the meantime, and we assume you'll be working with partners or potential partners to see what could be assembled for that property, if there's an alternative.
Thank you.
I have to make a statement, please. Ma'am, would you please acknowledge
Well,
me?
Counselor Foss had his hand up earlier. Did you still, you're good? Okay. Sure.
I think, for clarity's sake, we're not partners, okay? I think that's a legal distinction. I am not partnering with Bacchus, so I'd like to make that clear. This would be a tenant relationship, a lessee-lessor. That's what this is, not a partnership. Okay, they have their partnership, I have my ministry, separate things. I'm looking to use space for the ministry in that property, in the parish house, they call it, and I have made a firm commitment that if this sale goes through and, you know, they own the property, I have made a firm commitment to enter into a leasing agreement, and we have not worked out the details. Could it be 5 years? Could it be whatever? I have made a commitment to help with the reconstruction, not the reconstruction, that would be a bad word, reno or
Renovation,
modifications of the property. So that would be on my ministry. We're gonna do fundraising for that, grants. I have been assured from many other entities that operate like mine, it's not gonna be a problem to raise the funds. Is that my ministry is very needed in the community. And I know I don't want to speak for the Waterville Area Soup Kitchen, but I don't believe they would think of themselves as partners. That too would be a business relationship. So I just want to make that clear because I think that's an important distinction. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a
Again,
question,
we
too.
really have to.
You had a question for me?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
If I may, thank you. Thank you, Reverend. What building would you be using in this?
Thank you.
Where the offices are or the rectory?
No, not the rectory. It would be the parish house. It's a 2-story building. It would be adequate, one level, for a 3-bedroom apartment. We could convert it into that. I've had people look at it to do that. Easy to do it, the plumbing, everything's there. And we'd have a downstairs office. We have a licensed clinical social worker, Colleen Madigan. She said I can say this. She would like to lease space there. She's also on the advisory committee of Starfish Village. And so that's what we would be looking, we would provide other services, other clergy and I, It would be beautifully located to the Waterville area soup kitchen. You know, we just centrally located.
So
We
this
could
would
also-
be the office building that they, okay.
Yes, and I
So-
think they call it the parish house.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But again, that's a completely different plan than the ordinance that we've been given for it to be resident, all of that. That has
Okay.
to go back through council to us, like, that's what the ordinance says.
Yeah, I
So
understand
we can keep going around this as many times as you want right now, but I'm telling you right now, there is nothing we can do about that. We cannot make that recommendation to council. They have to kick it back to us, because especially that building, it's a totally different use.
I absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
All I was trying to do is to make sure that we didn't have on the record something that wasn't factually correct,
Understand.
because there are a lot of people here hearing it. And I understand that your attorney would want to know, to have me clarify this, so that's all I was doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I'd just make a recommendation, Mo, to you and to the soup kitchen and to the council that you spoke of, that you should probably get with them and draft letters of intent. It would probably
Yeah.
help them and help
Thank
the
you.
council for that meeting, so that we'd have copies of them.
And for full disclosure, Uriah Pelletier is on my advisory committee.
For
And Kelly
Starfish.
Madigan, Elizabeth Jabbar, some other people. I've talked to my advisory committee, most of them, and they support this move. But I do understand exactly what you've just said. I was only trying to make sure that we didn't walk out here thinking I was in a partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lori Trefethan. Just a quick question. If the church originally had the soup kitchen sitting in a residential area, then if they are looking to do a soup kitchen, then there wouldn't be any question about rezoning to commercial. It would just sit as it is as residential, correct?
Well, under the zoning, churches can operate as in residentials, so.
Right.
But the other thing is, the proposal that we have been sent from the
was
council.
the original.
Yeah.
No, I
yeah.
get that. I was just saying that if that's what they were gonna do, then.
Which is why I said to Jim, perhaps putting a line in there about these were the uses before, perhaps those would be acceptable by a new developer.
Staying in the same residential zone.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, Jennifer.
It's been recommended to me that perhaps this will be a quicker
hear you that
process.
well.
Sorry. It's been suggested it would be a quicker process if we pull the proposal, go back to the city council. So pull it for now. You don't send anything to them. We go back to the city council, present the new proposal, and then it comes and it'll be a quicker process. So I don't know. Sounds reasonable to me.
Sounds very reasonable to me.
Yeah.
It's already written.
No,
It'll
we-
be a new one.
We have a process in place, so that that can be done.
Okay.
It's the applicant's call.
So, my question to you would be, if it's nonprofit and residential in the office, and if we have a nonprofit and perhaps another nonprofit or a government entity in the upstairs, do I even need to come to this?
I think we still would have to rezone that office building because it's residential D as in dog. So the
And B.
B, that one's
That's
in B.
okay.
There's two residential zones
But I
there.
believe
But
Ann had said
they're-
that a nonprofit could be in there?
And that's a residential C zone.
Oh, okay.
But that would be, I would think, a relatively
That would-
minor change to
I'll-
rezone.
yeah, I'll defer to the planner's wisdom on this one and experience, but the church building is in a residential D. Residential D allows everything that's in residential C. And residential C allows historical institutions and non-residential philanthropic or charitable institutions of a public or semi-public nature. So if a nonprofit operating a soup kitchen would be, that would sound like a charitable institution. Ann, would you agree?
Yes, but I think we were talking about the office.
I understand, but I just
with-
I'm going through the process,
Okay.
and you talked about putting two nonprofits in that church building, for example, or something like that. Certainly, it wouldn't need a rezoning to put charitable or philanthropic uses in that church building.
Okay. And the office building is the one, then the concern. So if it was a nonprofit, you're saying it still has to come back here, even if it's a nonprofit and half residential, half nonprofit?
Because it's in the residential B zone, and it's the residential C zone and the residential D zone that allow the nonprofit.
You could do one of two things.
My suggestion would be to ask for the office building to go into the residential D zone like the rest of the church. That makes sense?
It would, except there's a prohibition on offices along Gilman and Pleasant Street. It could be that it needs to be rezoned, period, to a district. That's something that can be worked out. That's something that I think you and Ann can discuss, and we can talk about the options if that's what you'd like to do. As it is now, an office cannot go where it is right now.
So regardless, it'll have to come back here to the planning board.
In some way, and even to take that church and then change the use from a church to a philanthropic or a charitable institution, would that trigger change of use approval under the site plan ordinance or zoning?
No.
No, okay.
Okay, so we're going to pull the proposal for this for now.
Okay.
And it'll go to the city council. You'll have something new in front of you.
Do you want to formally pull it, or do you want to table it, postpone it? You just said for now, so I'm...
Okay. We're going to pull it for
Okay.
good. This proposal is pulled for good.
Thank you.
Do we have to motion or vote on that?
We can, if you want to vote on a motion to accept the withdrawal of the application for contract zoning.
I will motion to accept the developer's suggestion to pull their proposal of
Do we,
contract zoning.
just point, clarification, maybe Ann would know. Have we done that in the past, though? If somebody pulls something?
No.
Thank you. I didn't think so.
But for the record, if you wanted to do it, it's easy enough to do.
Well, we've never done it in the past,
Then we
so
won't do it.
I don't see why we would want to do it. She's
Is there a
verbally...
second on my motion?
David seconded.
Thank you, Dave. Let's do a quick all in favor.
Roll call.
Okay, roll call, sorry.
Sorry.
Dave?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tom?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Uriah?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, with that being done, I will motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Do I have to give
Yes.
a roll call for that?